There's an outboard motor that plants a 7,000-pound boat on plane at 2,500 RPM. A job that takes most gas engines 4,000. It burns a quarter less fuel than anything comparable on your transom. It's built to last 3 times as long, and the fuel in its tank won't explode, because it can't. Navies are buying it. Unmanned military vehicles already run on it. And after 10 years and a fortune in development, the British company that builds it has quietly reorganized itself around a conclusion you're not supposed to say out loud in a product launch. The average boater, you, probably shouldn't buy one. They're not wrong. This engine is genuinely brilliant, and for most of the people watching this, it would also be the most expensive mistake they ever bolt to a transom. Which side of that line you're on comes down to 3 numbers. And that's what this video is for. Let's get into it. The high-horsepower diesel outboard spent decades filed under impossible. The logic for wanting one was always obvious. Diesel dominates every serious working vessel on the water, from trawlers to tugboats. So hanging that reliability on a transom should have been a natural move. The physics said otherwise. Diesel engines earn their strength from compression ratios that demand heavy blocks. And heavy is the one thing an outboard cannot afford to be. What did exist were automotive engines forced into a marine costume. And nobody had ever brought a true 300 horsepower diesel outboard to production. The industry mostly stopped asking. A British company called Cox Marine decided the problem wasn't diesel. It was the conversion. Working from Shoreham by Sea on England's south coast, they spent roughly a decade designing a diesel outboard from a blank sheet. Not a car engine adapted for the water, but a purpose-built marine V8, mounted vertically the way a gas outboard is, with every component drawn for this one job. The scale of that commitment is easy to skip past. From the engine's first firing to production took 7 years, a journey that ran through EPA Tier 3, IMO 2, and RCD 2 emission certification, a new manufacturing facility, and the core engineering problem of making a 4.4-liter twin-turbocharged V8 diesel light enough and compact enough to hang off a transom. Production finally began in 2020. The contrast with the alternative approach tells you what makes Cox different. Sweden's Oaks, the other serious name in diesel outboards, takes a horizontally mounted automotive powerhead. Their 300 horsepower model uses a 3.0-liter BMW inline-6 and drives the propeller through a system of heavy-duty belts and pulleys. Clever engineering, and it works. But it's still a car engine solving a boat problem. The Cox is an outboard by birth. It uses a conventional vertical drive shaft, a standard 1.25-inch prop shaft compatible with industry hubs, and a universal transom bolt pattern designed so it can replace an existing gas outboard without rebuilding the boat. What came out of that decade is a 60-degree V8 displacing 4.4 liters, breathing through twin turbochargers, fed by common rail direct injection, topping out at 4,000 RPM. The number that matters, though, is none of those. It's the torque. The engine produces 1,052 Newton meters, about 776 pound-feet, and it delivers that peak at just 2,600 RPM. Independent testing has measured torque outputs roughly double those of comparable gas outboards at the same engine speeds. Double, at the engine speeds where a boat actually needs it. If that feels abstract, here's what it does on the water. When Boat Test ran a single CXO300 on a front-runner 26 center console, a boat weighing 7,395 pounds as tested, it climbed onto plane from around 2,500 RPM. Most gas-powered boats can't plane until 3,500 RPM, and heavier ones need 4,000. That gap is the entire diesel argument compressed into one moment. A loaded hull that would leave a gas engine revving hard against its own weight steps up early and without drama, because the diesel's full strength arrives near the bottom of the tack instead of the top. An engine that wasn't supposed to exit, built the hard way from scratch while the easy path was bolting a marine skirt onto a BMW, and the case for it gets better before it gets complicated. Start with the range, because it's the number with a certified test behind it. Boating Magazine ran the CXO300 through its full instrumented protocol and found its sweet spot at 3,000 RPM and 29.7 miles per hour, burning 8.9 gallons per hour. That works out to 3.3 miles per gallon and a cruising range of 297 miles on the test boat. A 7,000-pound platform drinking from a 100-gallon tank. Cox claims at least 25% better fuel efficiency than comparable gas outboards, and their more recent material puts the fuel burn advantage near 30%. Whatever the exact figure on your hull, the direction is not in dispute. For every gallon a gas engine needs, the diesel asks for meaningfully less, and on a working boat, that difference compounds every single day. Then there's how long it lives. Cox rates the engine for up to 3 times the operational life of an equivalent gas outboard, and backs the recreational version with a 5-year, 1,500-hour warranty. Diesel durability isn't a marketing invention. It's why every commercial fleet on Earth runs it. Fewer RPM at cruise, a stronger rotating assembly, and an engine loafing where a gas motor works hard. The safety argument is the one that gets undersold, and it shouldn't be. Gasoline evaporates readily and ignites from a spark, which is why its vapors collecting in a bilge have always been treated as an emergency. Diesel is compression ignited. There is no spark, and the fuel itself won't explode. Cox builds its entire pitch to governments around the fact that compression ignition eliminates the explosion risk that comes with gasoline. A family boater reads that as peace of mind. A Navy putting ammunition on a small boat reads it as a requirement. And that opens the door to the engine's most underrated trick. NATO operates on a single fuel principle. One fuel type across an entire theater of operations. And the Cox V8 is fully compliant with NATO's standardization agreement for single fuel operations. A Navy running this outboard fuels its small boats from the same supply as everything else it operates, with no separate gasoline logistics and no cans of a second fuel stored aboard a mothership. The same logic serves a yacht owner in miniature, because a diesel tender drinks from the yacht's own tanks. It also burns HVO, the renewable diesel made from waste oils, as a straight drop-in with no engine modifications, cutting life cycle CO2 without touching the hardware. Put plainly, there are boats for which this is simply the correct engine. Patrol boats, pilot boats, heavy offshore hulls, super yacht tenders, unmanned vessels running days at a time. And the operators of those boats figured that out some time ago. The engineering case closes itself, which is exactly where the story turns. Because everything you just heard is true, and yet the company that spent 10 years building this engine has spent the last 2 years walking away from people like you. Not because the engine failed, because of 3 numbers that no amount of brilliant engineering has been able to move. And the first one is printed on the price tag. The first number is $50,000. That's the expected price of a CXO300, roughly twice what a gasoline outboard of the same horsepower costs. Before a single gallon of the cheaper running starts paying you back, you're $25,000 behind where the gas buyer stands. And the payback only comes through the fuel gap, which means it only comes with hours. A commercial operator burning fuel 5 days a week can close that distance in a few seasons. A weekend boater running 80 hours a year is doing arithmetic that never lands. Several $100s saved per season against a premium of $25,000. Run that math to its end, and the engine outlives your interest in owning it before it breaks even. The second number is 826 pounds. That's the dry weight of the Cox, and it needs company to mean anything. Mercury's 4.6-liter V8 4-stroke weighs 538. Yamaha's F300 weighs 562. Suzuki's DF300A, the heavy one of the gas crowd, is 639. The Cox carries roughly 200 to 290 pounds more than any of them. The equivalent of a large adult passenger standing permanently on your transom, in the worst possible place for weight to live. On a big offshore hull with real displacement, that's absorbed without complaint. And the reviewers who tested it said as much. On the mid-size boats most people actually own, it changes trim, it changes how the boat sits at rest, and on smaller hulls, it can push past what the transom was rated to carry. This isn't a flaw anyone fixes with a bracket. The strength of a diesel comes from a compression ratio of 16:1, and containing those pressures takes metal. The weight is the price of everything Part 2 promised. The third number is the one nobody sees coming, and for a huge share of American boaters, it's the deal breaker all by itself. 5 miles per hour. That's the slowest speed Boating Magazine could achieve with the CXO300. 750 RPM in gear with the standard gear ratio. A typical gas outboard idles along at 1.5 to 2 miles per hour. If you troll for a living or for love, walleye guys, salmon guys, anyone dragging bait on the slow crawl that half of freshwater fishing depends on, this engine cannot do your kind of fishing. Not does it less well. Cannot. There's no software patch for an idle speed built into the gearing and the torque of the machine. The engine that shrugs off a 7,000-pound hull refuses to go slowly. And the same muscular character that makes it brilliant offshore makes it useless behind a planer boat. Notice what those 3 numbers have in common. None of them is a defect. The price reflects low-volume manufacturing of a genuinely new machine. The weight is diesel physics doing what diesel physics does. The trolling floor is the flip side of the torque that plants heavy boats on plane. Every wall around this engine is load-bearing. Remove any of them and you lose part of what makes it exceptional. That's what separates the Cox from the troubled motors this channel usually covers. The engines in our defects video failed because something was wrong with them. This one excludes most buyers because of everything that's right with it. And Cox knows. That's the part of this story almost nobody has reported. Over the past 2 years, the company's own decisions have quietly drawn the exact line this video is drawing. And where they've chosen to stand tells you precisely who this engine is really for. In 2025, Cox Marine restructured its commercial operations and completed a transition to selling business to business. Read that plainly. The company that built the most advanced outboard of its generation reorganized itself so that its customers are fleets, governments, and boat builders, not individuals walking into showrooms. Its 2026 distribution strategy carries an internal name: fewer, bigger, better. In the words of Commercial Operations Director Gemma Crocker, consolidating the partner network around fewer, larger players instead of chasing retail reach. And when the CEO of D-Power, their Swedish distributor, was asked where demand is actually growing, his answer was direct: commercial and military applications, including autonomous vessels. The order book tells the same story. Cox's engines power the Sea Archer, the first Australian-built unmanned surface vehicle, running twin CXO300s with no human aboard to care about a trolling speed. The company's own year in review describes 2026 as the year to deepen adoption in defense, government, and industrial markets, where it lists diesel's advantages: safety, torque, range, life cycle cost as decisive. For government fleets, it now promises ready-to-ship stock and fast-track production for urgent programs. That's not a company courting weekend boaters anymore. That's a defense supplier talking. None of this is retreat. The 350 horsepower version launched at the start of 2024. The order book opened and deliveries were scheduled for this year. The world's most powerful diesel outboard aimed exactly where the 300 found its home. Meanwhile, the category Cox created is attracting company. Caudwell Marine, backed by billionaire John Caudwell and drawing on technology from the F1 H2O Powerboat Racing World Championship, is targeting a 2026 launch for its own 300 horsepower diesel outboard. Nobody spends that kind of money entering a market that doesn't work. The market works. It just isn't you. So here's the verdict, honestly split. If you run a boat for a living, charters, patrol, pilotage, workboat duty, or you own a heavy offshore hull that eats 400 hours a year, this engine deserves your serious attention. Your hours turn the fuel gap into real money. Your displacement absorbs the weight, and the 3 times lifespan means the premium buys you engines you won't have to replace. The same goes for a super yacht tender drinking from the mothership's diesel, and for any operation where gasoline aboard is a risk someone has to sign for. If you're everyone else, The weekend family boat, the 80-hour season, the walleye troller, the mid-size hull near its transom limit? The honest answer is that this engine was never for you. And buying it would mean paying $25,000 extra for advantages your boat can't collect. That's not a criticism of you or the machine. It's a fit problem, and fit problems don't negotiate. Which brings us back to the title. This engine is brilliant, certified, tested, proven, and genuinely new under the sun, in an industry where that's rare, and almost nobody watching should buy it. Both of those statements are true at once, and the company that built it would quietly agree with both. There's something worth respecting in that. Cox spent 10 years and a fortune building exactly the right engine for a small group of operators, then had the discipline to aim it at them instead of pretending it belonged on every transom. Most manufacturers spend their marketing budgets blurring that line. This one drew it. The rarest thing in boating isn't a breakthrough engine. It's a company that tells you, through its own choices, who its product is not for. And a boater who can hear that and walk away from something excellent because excellent and right aren't the same thing. If this channel has one job, it's helping you tell those two apart.